Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suspends campaign and backs Trump. RFK Jr. just endorsed Trump. Will it matter in November? Independent White House candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has joined the Republican nominee, Donald Trump, on stage at a rally in Arizona after dropping out of the race and endorsing the former U.S. president. Mr. Kennedy, 70, a Democrat for most of his life and the scion of the Kennedy dynasty, said the principles that had led him to leave the party had now compelled him to throw my support to President Trump. He said in a press conference in Phoenix, Arizona, on Friday that he would seek to remove his name from the ballot in 10 battleground states. Before welcoming RFK Jr. to the stage on Friday, Trump promised, if elected, to release all remaining documents relating to the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Trump praised Mr. Kennedy as phenomenal and brilliant at the rally later in Glendale. Democratic rival Kamala Harris said she would try to earn the support of Kennedy voters. With November's election looming, Mr. Kennedy's polling has slumped from a high of double figures as funds and national coverage dried up. The son of U.S. Senator Robert F. Kennedy and nephew of President John F. Kennedy, he is from the most famed family in Democratic politics. Mr. Kennedy's decision to back a Republican for the White House has outraged his relatives, who previously condemned his invocation of the family name in a Super Bowl ad back in February. Kerry Kennedy, his sister, said his support for Trump was a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold most dear. It is a sad ending to a sad story. This decision is agonizing for me because of the difficulties it causes my wife and my children and my friends, Mr. Kennedy said on Friday. But I have the certainty that this is what I'm meant to do, and that certainty gives me internal peace, even in storms. He is married to Cheryl Hines, the star of HBO comedy Curb Your Enthusiasm. She posted on X, formerly Twitter, that she deeply respected her husband's decision to suspend his campaign. She did not comment on his endorsement of Trump. Mr. Kennedy told reporters on Friday that Trump's insistence he could end the war in Ukraine by negotiating with Russia alone would justify my support for his campaign. There are still many issues and approaches on which we continue to have very serious differences, but we are aligned on other key issues. He said he would remove his name from 10 states where his presence would be a spoiler to Trump's effort. He has already withdrawn from the battleground states of Arizona and Pennsylvania. But it is too late for him to pull out from the swing states of Michigan, Nevada, and Wisconsin, election officials told AP News Agency. Mr. Kennedy said he had launched his campaign in April 2023 as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the champions of the Constitution. But he left because it had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big money. He blamed his decision to suspend his campaign on media control and his former party's efforts to thwart his run, adding, "In my heart, I no longer believe I have a realistic path to victory in the face of relentless and systematic censorship." Mr. Kennedy hovered around 14%, 16% in polls at his most popular. However, his ratings have slumped to single digits since Ms. Harris became the Democratic nominee. He said in his press conference that he had offered to work with Ms. Harris and her bid for the White House. Democrats sounded unfazed by his announcement. Donald Trump isn't earning an endorsement that's going to help build support. He's inheriting the baggage of a failed fringe candidate. Good riddance, Democratic National Committee Senior Advisor Mary Beth Cahill said in a statement. Mr. Kennedy's campaign became synonymous with the anti-vaccine movement as he frequently touted his leadership of the Children's Health Defense Organization, formerly known as the World Mercury Project. In recent weeks, Mr. Kennedy recounted how he dumped a dead bear cub that had been hit by a car in New York's Central Park in 2014 as a joke. Earlier in his campaign, it was revealed that he had suffered from a brain parasite over a decade ago, which caused severe memory loss and brain fog. His announcement capped days of rumor that Mr. Kennedy offered to endorse Trump to secure a role in his next administration. Trump told CNN earlier this week he would certainly be open to Mr. Kennedy playing a role, while Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., said he would be suited to blow up a federal department. Merrill Matthews, a resident scholar with the Conservative Institute for Policy Innovation, told the BBC that Mr. Kennedy's decision highlighted the two-party system in the US and how difficult it is to get new ideas and fresh people into the process. RFK Jr. just endorsed Trump. Will it matter in November? The independent campaign of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is over, but the question that has followed him on the campaign trail remains. Does his support come mostly from those who would otherwise vote Republican or Democrat? His base was small and shrinking. An average of opinion polls by the website Real Clear Politics puts him on 5%, down from the high teens just a few months ago. But in a closely fought election, Kennedy voters could swing victory either way for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris in November's election. Much of the slump in Mr. Kennedy's numbers, experts say, is down to excitement among Democrats over their new candidate, Vice President Harris. When it was Biden versus Trump, people were looking for a third option, said Merrill Matthews, a resident scholar with the Conservative Institute for Policy Innovation, who has studied the history of third-party campaigns. But with Kamala Harris coming into the picture and gaining the Democratic nomination, that has changed. Opinion polls that reflect independent and third-party candidates, including the Green Party's Jill Stein and left-wing activist Cornel West, have been inconclusive about where Mr. Kennedy's support is coming from. In some cases, they show his presence in the race benefiting Republicans, in others Democrats, and in nearly every such poll, the margins are slim. But observers believe that a significant chunk of Mr. Kennedy's liberal-leaning support may have already been drawn back to the Democratic Party by Ms. Harris's rise. Mr. Matthews said the suspension of RFK Jr.'s campaign means Trump will get a little bit of a bounce. But I'm not sure it will be very much, as Kennedy was dropping pretty significantly in the polls, he said. Still, a few votes in battleground states might be enough to swing an election that appears very close at the moment. Mr. Kennedy is keenly aware of this, announcing on Friday that he would only be deleting his name from the ballot in swing states, where he believes his presence would hurt Trump's campaign. Although he's a member of the country's most famous Democratic family, Mr. Kennedy spent most of his dropout speech criticizing the party. He also spent much of his campaign butting heads with the Democratic establishment. At a fundraiser this spring in suburban Detroit, a key battleground in the crucial swing state of Michigan, protesters from the local Democratic Party stood outside holding signs calling him a spoiler. His decision to throw his support behind Trump will vindicate those allegations in the minds of Kennedy critics. I think some of his voters will vote for Trump, and there are others who won't be satisfied with either candidate and who just won't vote, said Melissa Smith, author of Third Parties, Outsiders and Renegades, Modern Challenges to the Two-Party System in Presidential Elections. But Mr. Kennedy's campaign, struggling for cash, might have had more impact on the race if he had stayed in or dropped out at the last minute. With more than 2 months to go until Election Day, Ms. Smith predicted that his run would be a blip in history, which could quickly become old news in an election contest that has already thrown up lots of surprises. For now, however, Trump appears better placed to capture more of what's left of Mr. Kennedy's support. The Trump campaign released a memo from its pollster Tony Fabrizio stating that Republicans stand to gain. "This is good news for President Trump and his campaign, plain and simple," he wrote. But his endorsement also poses some risk for Trump, as Democrats seek to define the Republican ticket as weird, by which they mean outside the mainstream of American politics. Mr. Kennedy, with his fringe anti-vaccination views, could end up providing more material for such attacks. Outside this week's Democratic National Convention, a tongue-in-cheek newspaper stating that it was funded by his campaign boasted the headline, "Kennedy is weird." Chock full of anti-vaccine messages and references to conspiracy theories, its underlying message was that weird is good. The Harris campaign, meanwhile, did not directly refer to RFK Jr. in a statement responding to the news on Friday. For any American out there who is tired of Donald Trump looking for a new way forward, ours is a campaign for you, said Harris campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon. Subscribe for more updates.